the man, the breathwork king.
Oh my God, that felt like 20 years of therapy without having to say a word. I was like side of the stage, high-fiving Tony for 4 days. And
He did have the breakups. He did have the addictions. He did have the trauma.
Sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to stop and realize where you are today is where you wanted to be a few years ago.
Welcome to the Heart of Show Business. I am your host, Alexia Melocchi. I believe in great storytelling and that every successful artist has a deep desire to express something from the heart to create a ripple effect in our society.
Hello to all the heart-centered artists out there. I am so thrilled for today's episode. I gotta tell you, my new season is freaking on fire. I've had amazing guests today. And you know me, I like to change it up. I like to bring a little mindset into the game because you know what? Artists are such sensitive creatures. And we, especially when you're an artist and you're living in Hollywood, rejection is like served on a hot platter, on a cold platter, whatever they say. And therefore, here's some ways on how to handle rejection, how to handle stress, how to center yourself, how to love yourself. And I discovered this thing called breathwork. And the king of breathwork is Jon Paul Crimi, who I got to meet through a friend of mine in some, mastermind. And then I got to experience his class live. And it was a game changer for me. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it because I'm only going to say I'm going to let him talk. But I got to tell you, this is a guy who has coached movie stars, Olympians, CEOs of business. He travels the world. He has education courses. You can do this even on Zoom, people. You don't even have to physically go there, although I do recommend you go and check it out. And he's going to be in LA in about a month. So I would love for you to go and meet him. So welcome to my show, the man, the breathwork king, Jon Paul Crimi.
Wow. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's amazing. I feel really good now.
Yeah, tingle, just kind of like how you make me feel when I'm in your class or I'm on a Zoom with you,
Yeah.
So, so here's what I love is that people go, what the hell is breath work? People think, what am I going to do? What am I doing? Am I just like sitting around and just like breathing for half an hour? What is that going to do to me? Like I can do that by myself. So tell me a little bit like about how you came to discover this for yourself and your mission.
Well, the first thing is breathwork is an umbrella term, right? Meaning it's like saying fitness. I do fitness. If you said to someone, I do fitness, they'd be like, well, what do you do? Do you do CrossFit? Do you do Soul Cycle? Do you do yoga? Like what type of fitness? Because there's so many different types of breath work out there that makes it confusing for people. So the type that I mainly teach, I know all the techniques, but the one I focus on is circular breath work or conscious connected breathing. And the reason I focus on that one is because it creates a massive shift for people, a massive change in the first session. And the results are immediate and undeniable. And the beauty of it is the more skeptical you are, the more cynical you are, kind of the bigger the experience is. Like I was very cynical and skeptical when I first found this type of breath work because I thought, like you said, I already know how to breathe. Like why would I go and pay someone to show me how to breathe? I've been breathing my whole life. So you can't wrap your brain around something that you've been doing your whole life can cause a massive shift, a massive transformation. But if you did this technique, first of all, I show people a technique that they've never done before. So they're going to do something, they're going to breathe in a way that they've never breathed before. And then it's going to create an experience that they've never had before. And so it's crazy. It's incredible. And when I found it, a couple people had suggested it to me. This is over a decade ago. I had just met Tony Robbins. Tony was incredible. Tony invited me to his seminar. I went and did this seminar and it was like life-changing, as everyone who's done a Tony seminar says, right? And I was like side of the stage, high-fiving Tony for 4 days, and it was so powerful. And so when I came back from that, I was kind of wide open. And that's when two people who didn't know each other said, you need to go do breath work. And I said, all right, I'm smart enough to know, even though I think it's stupid, I'm smart enough to know that if a couple people tell me this, that maybe it's a sign, right? And like Tony had opened me up to possibilities. So I went and did this class, And it was as awful as I thought it was going to be, in the sense that, it was like new agey and woo-woo and like crystals and oils and terrible music. And I was just like, oh my God, how have I ended up here? Like, what? But then once I started doing the breathing technique, I had an experience like I'd never had in my life. I cleared. The most common statement after my classes is, oh my God, that felt like 20 years of therapy without having to say a word. Who doesn't need that right now, right? So that's what it felt like. I cleared all this stuff out of my body, out of my nervous system. And I started doing it every day, mostly on my own, and having these incredible experiences. And I realized, why doesn't everybody know about this? Why doesn't the world know about this? Why didn't somebody show this to me when I was 14 and suicidal, right? Like, it would have saved my life. It would have changed. I mean, I'm still alive, but it would have changed my life. So I realized, oh, it's the new aginess of it. It's the woo-woo of it. If somebody taught this in a way that was like Tony Robbins style meets funny East Coast edgy, right? They'd have hundreds of people in the room. They took all that out. If they played cool music, if they did a bunch of different things, and that's what I did. I took the technique and I repackaged it, I repurposed it, modernized it, and made it more palatable for regular people, for stressed out housewives, for entrepreneurs, for firemen, for everyone out there who's just got anxiety, stress, depression, grief, all these things that we all have that we don't realize are stuck inside of us.
Well, you know what I love about this, Jon Paul, is that people go, oh, I've done the inner work, right? I've gone to therapy, I've done my meditation, I've researched myself, I've done my self-growth process. But exactly like you said, we do not know what is stored in our body that we're not even aware of. So for me, that I've experienced, I'm like, oh, I got this. I'm in control of my life. I know how to do my affirmations, my this, my that, whatever. I know where I'm going. And then all of a sudden, this wave of stuff comes out of the body and you're going, what was that this time? Like, this is crazy. Like, I thought I was in charge of myself. And people, you're not in charge of yourself when you do this. It's crazy,
Yeah.
But it's just, what I love about you, Jon Paul, is exactly like you said, you took out the woo-woo and obviously, I love it when you say to people, don't look around to people next to you, because of course, you're going to hear people maybe yell, scream, cry, laugh, whatever, and it's interesting because you do it so well that you actually don't pay attention to those around you. You're so into yourself. You crack up.
Yeah, I listen, I need to lighten it up, because doing all the inner work can be a little heavy sometimes, and all this stuff. And I'm talking about, clearing the trauma, and the stuff that you have. And so I want to lighten it up and make it a little light. And what I want to do is crack people open and then fill them back up with gratitude and love. And that's what I do in the class. And so I try to make it fun and light in the beginning, because I'm saying all these things like, oh, your hands might cramp up and this might happen and then you might cry and all this, and people are like freaking out like, what? I thought we were just breathing. I thought this was like a meditation. I didn't know it was more like a workout, an emotional workout. And you hit it right on the head when you said, I thought I did all the work. I felt the same way. I had done years of therapy and 12-step recovery and all the different work. And I was helping like huge celebrities myself. And then I laid down and breathed in this way. And just all this stuff came up and came out. And I'm like, oh, there's this whole other layer to get through. And what's amazing is once you clear this stuff out, you didn't even realize you were reacting in relationships. You were reacting in your career out of certain past experiences. So you were making decisions and operating out of these past experiences. But what this does is it clears that out of you. So now you can make the decision from a different place. And oftentimes I say this, we're like two lawyers in our head fighting over this decision. Like when I used to do private sessions, I don't anymore, but someone would come in and they'd say, I go, what's the problem? What's going on? Where do you feel stuck? And they go, well, I'm in this relationship. And I go, okay, tell me about the relationship in under 3 minutes. Right. And they're like, well, he's really nice and he does this and he does that. I'm like, okay, what's the problem then? Well, he doesn't do this. And they're the lawyer pleading the case on both sides. And I go, okay, great. Let's just lay down and set the intention to get clarity on this. And they lay down and they breathe in this way. And they know exactly what the answer is when they sit up, because what happens during this breath work is it's called transient hypofrontality. Part of your frontal lobe shuts off, the prefrontal cortex. That's where the ego lives. And it turns off and you move into your heart and you make decisions and choices from your heart, which is a whole nother way to operate your life. And that's the way you want to operate your life on big decisions for relationships and career, right? And so they sit up and they go, he's not the one. And, sometimes they end the relationship. And then sometimes what happens is the brain turns back on and they get back in their ego. They get back in their fear. And the fear, it starts to talk to them and it tells them, well, you don't want to go on Bumble again. You don't want to go back on those dating apps. You don't want to go, you're like, he's not that bad, And so they get in their fear of being alone. But when you do this work, when you do this breath work, you're connected to yourself and you're not alone. So you start to connect to yourself in a way. And, the longest, most important relationship you're ever going to have is the one with yourself. So that's the one you need to work on first. And then, ironically, when you work on that, when you don't give a shit about the other people and the other relationships and the person, whatever, then everyone starts magnetizing towards you because you're not chasing it. You're bringing it to you. That's much more attractive when you don't care, when you're not chasing things. People start to magnetize towards you and then it shifts. And so, but you have to do the work to get through the fear. And a lot of people, they start to do the work and then they quit, or they're not even willing to go there. So if you want a different life, if you want change, you have to show up and do the work. There's no way around it. It's called breath work.
Absolutely. And yet it's so funny because it is actually a little bit hard. You would think that something so natural as breathing. I mean, don't we all subconsciously say you're an artist, you're about to go on stage, the artist will take a breath before stepping on that stage, or you're about to go, skydiving, you're going to take a big breath, or you're freaking out over something, you go, just breathe.
Yeah.
So you're going to do that. So it's almost innate for us to use that. But when somebody tells you lay down and breathe for 30 minutes, you're like, damn, why am I not even allowing this to happen for myself? And that's where you realize all the blockages on something so primal and so simple as breathing, and what gets in the way of that, right?
Well, a lot of times too, in some of those scenarios, people don't realize they start to hold their breath and they start to breathe shallow in their chest. And you have like I say this all the time, you have a breathing pattern for anxiety, you have a breathing pattern for fear, for stress, for depression. It's usually really shallow or holding your breath all the time. And when you start to breathe deep, you can actually shift that breathing pattern. And if you can change that breathing pattern, you can change out of that emotion. And if you can change that emotion, you can change your life. So I say, change your breath, change the emotion, change your life. I actually posted something on my Instagram yesterday. It was pretty interesting. It was LeBron James, this basketball player for the Los Angeles Lakers, and he sat down on the bench before the game and he started breathing in through his nose and out through his mouth. I call it the transformer breath. And it's a breath that grounds you, that centers you. I do it at the beginning of all my classes where you inhale in through the nose, like 4 or 5 seconds. And then you do a long exhale through the mouth. And that just puts you in your parasympathetic nervous system. It starts to ground you and calm you down. And that's a great technique before you do an event, before you speak in front of an audience, before you say something stupid to your wife that you're going to regret for the rest of the day.
What I love about you is there's not been a time where I have not seen you get emotional when you're working with people. You truly love. I guess that's why you like people on Zoom to put the camera on. You really, truly love seeing them having a breakthrough, and you get so caught up in it. And I love that about you, because you know what? When people have a mission in life, it is such a difference than somebody who just says, oh, I'm just going to help people, whatever. You truly love what you do, and you love...
It's a calling. It's a calling. You know, people were calling me. I didn't even want to do it in the beginning, but people saw such a massive change in me that they asked me to show them. And so it became a calling. That's what a calling looks like. People are saying, hey, show me. I was still on my Hollywood dream path, selling TV shows and doing all this. And people were like, no, I want you to come do the breath work with me. And so the thing is like, I do love it. I want to be moved, and I want to move other people in that process. And there's lots of other things I could do and go make a bunch of money, probably a lot more money, but that's not going to fill my soul. That's not going to give me purpose and fulfillment. And it doesn't mean that I'm happy all the time. Happiness is an emotion that comes and goes like clouds in the sky, but I have purpose. I have fulfillment. I feel good about what I do. I love it when I do the class. I love to see people have this big transformation and to be a part of it. And, the part about me getting emotional is like, I'm very sensitive, very emotional. And I grew up in Boston, the South Shore of Boston, Massachusetts. And I grew up in the 5th most Irish town in America, surrounded by the 17 or 13 most Irish towns in America. And it was just a drinking, fighting environment that didn't really allow for sensitivity and emotion. And so that was kind of my thing. It was like, I was embarrassed. It was hard. That's partly why I became an alcoholic. And then I'm sober now, almost 23 years. But your greatest wound can become your greatest gift. I think, that's one of the things that separates me out from other teachers, breathwork teachers in particular. It's like, I do get emotional during the class, and that gives you permission to get emotional. You hear the emotion in my voice, and that allows you to open up, because what comes from the heart goes to the heart. So when you hear someone genuinely getting affected, getting sensitive and emotional, that allows you, that gives you that permission. So I think that's one of the things that sets me apart from other teachers in that way.
It's recommended that they do it more than once, and that you have it accessible on a weekly basis, because you do have, here's some breath work for relationships, here's some breath work for stress, right?
Yeah.
So you're making it available to people so that they can access, like, I'm having kind of a shitty week, so maybe I should just go and do a little bit on a Sunday morning. It's going to make me feel better, right?
It usually takes a shitty week or a relationship breakup. People don't go and do something, they think is weird, like breath work, until they're in like some kind of pain emotionally or whatever. Or grief is a big one. It really helps with grief, but breakups, work stress, whatever. I do it online every Sunday on Zoom, and there's a replay. There's a 72-hour replay, because I usually have anywhere from 150 to 200 people sign up from all over the world. And a lot of those people are doing the replay because they're in different time zones. So it's 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time or 9 a.m. California time. And then the replay is good till Wednesday afternoon. So people will come, and I'll probably have like anywhere from 75 to 100 people in the class, and they'll have this experience with me online. And there's themes. There's breathwork for relationships. There's let go to grow. There's breathwork for stress and anxiety. But regardless of the theme, the breathwork is going to give you whatever it is you need in that moment.
I don't know how Jon Paul does it, but it's almost on every breathwork session, he's telling you things that you're going through. It's just so bizarre. But I think because he's been there, like he said it, he's been there, he lived it. He did have the breakups, he did have the addictions, he did have the trauma. So whenever he's coaching you, he's telling you things like, wow, it's not rehearsed, it's just real. And you go, oh my God, he's in my head. Like, this is exactly what I'm thinking when I'm breathing right now. How does that happen? But that's why.
Yeah, I actually know so when I walk around the room in person, I can hear someone crying and I go, oh, that's a breakup. And then I can hear someone over here crying and I go, oh, that's grief. And I know, it's so funny, because when my daughter was a baby, we watched this DVD that told you the different sounds of the cries. Like, this means the baby needs to be changed. This means the baby's hungry. And at first I thought, this is nonsense. But then you could hear it. If you start to really listen, you could hear the different sounds in the cry, the different types of cry with the baby. And then I started to tune into that in my class. I was like, oh, that sounds like grief. Oh, that sounds like a relationship. That sounds like, stress. That sounds like old trauma, childhood trauma, right? And so, and then people would tell me and give me the feedback. And I was like, I knew it. And I started to tune into that. But now I'm sounding a little woo-woo. I know, but weird stuff happens, and some of it's undeniable. And it's just like, I'm almost the woo-woo translator now, because I've seen so much stuff, and I'm like, God, that's so woo-woo. But let me tell you what it means for like a regular person, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting what you're talking about, that we are all craving connection, but the thing that we are most disconnected with is our own selves. And that, I think, is a surprising experience when you are doing the breath work with Jon Paul, is that you are able, if you allow it, to truly connect to yourself. And that is the most beautiful thing. And I love how, well, we're not going to give away too much of what you do, because, you know, people need to sign up and do it. But there is something that is done at the end that is so special, and it just fills you up with so much love and so much gratitude that you go, wow, that was 20 years of therapy.
Yeah, you don't know. People don't know what they don't know. They don't know they're disconnected from themselves. They don't know they're up in their head all day and they're not in their heart, and they're completely disconnected. You know, one of the things I always say, and I probably shouldn't give this away, but I'm gonna, is like, everybody wants somebody to show up and love them for who they are, the way they are. But we don't love ourselves for who we are, the way we are. So how are you going to expect somebody else to come and show up and love you for who you are when you're not loving yourself? So what this thing does is it really teaches you where you're not loving yourself, you're not accepting yourself, you're not showing up for yourself. And if you start doing those things, if you start showing up for yourself and you start loving yourself, you won't let people treat you poorly. The only reason we ever let anyone treat us bad is because we feel like we deserve it on some level. And when you start doing this work for yourself, you go, oh, I deserve better than this. And other people have to show up to that level that you're taking care of yourself. They have to show up to your level now, because you won't allow it in your life. So if you want to level up in your life, you got to do something different. You cannot go to the next level of your life, whether it's in your relationship or your career, with the same knowledge and tools and skills that you have now. If you want to go to another level, you have to learn some new skills. You have to learn something. You have to do something different. And it's so hard to do when you've been rejected so many times. I worked for this guy, and he made me stand out in front of the Department of Motor Vehicles and drag people into the gym next door. And people will be like, no, I'm going to pay a ticket. I'm going to renew my license. I'm not coming into the gym. But what he taught me was every no gets you that much closer to your yes. Right? So 9 out of 10 people would say no, but that 10th person would say yes. And I'd bring them in the gym and I'd sign them up and I'd show them how to work out and change their life. And so I was like, oh, these no's are making me money. They're getting me closer to the yes. These no's are helping people. So I started to shift my perception and change my perception. So that was one of the tools that I used, because it just means I'm getting closer to my thing that I want, that my goal. But how do I not let those no's affect me? How do I not let that rejection color how I walk into this meeting, how I walk into this relationship, right? So this thing clears the decks, wipes the board clean, and you start scratch. And you go, okay, I remember why I'm doing this. I remember what I love about this. I remember who I am and what I have to offer. And that's the key, because, you know, Tony Robbins, Oprah Winfrey, they were those people before they became those huge people. You know, you cannot be true to who you really are and give a shit what everybody thinks about you. You got to make a choice. Like I've made the choice. Like, I'm going to be who I want to be. I'm going to be true to myself. And if people don't like me, they're not my people. That's okay. My people are going to find me. So I need to be like, people are like, oh, you're so authentic. It's just me being me. Like, I don't give a shit. I'm not trying to make everybody like me. I'm not trying to please other people. If I do that, then you're just flat and watered down and boring. But if I'm really who I am and I don't give a shit, then my right people will find me and like me, and the other people will not, you know?
Exactly. So what would you say, because of course there is this great stigma about self-love that is associated with having a huge ego, right? People go, oh, you love yourself so much, or you expect that you must have a huge ego. So how would you explain to someone the subtle difference between truly being connected to your heart and loving yourself versus the person who loves themselves from an ego perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for me, self-love means showing up and doing the hard work, the uncomfortable work when no one's looking, and doing it for yourself. Like, it's not like shopping and bubble baths. Those things are great. Those are great rewards after you do the hard work, right? So like breath work is the hard work. Going to the gym is the hard work. You know, taking good care of yourself. That's the hard work. That's true self-love. It's not like, you not hearing what other people say and being like, no, I'm the best. You know, that's ego. That's a different thing. You know, there's an ego, and my ego. I always say my ego is not my amigo, and because people have asked me like, dude, you've become this like breathwork guru guy, and then you're the guy, and I'm like, listen, no. First of all, I'm not a guru. I'm not the guy. I don't put me on a pedestal. I'm a human being. I'm often, sometimes still a jerk. Just ask my wife. She'll tell you, right? And so I'm a human being. The breath work is the thing. I'm not the thing. So I have to really keep my ego in check and go like, they're here for the breath work. They're here for themselves. They're not here for me. I'm great at the breath work. Everything I've done in my life has turned out to make me great at this thing. It all makes sense now, right? So I'm great at teaching it, but it's not me. It's the breath that's doing it. It's the breath that they're coming for. It's the breath that's creating this thing inside of them that they feel amazing. I'm just a guide. I'm just a lighthouse shining the light on the rocks, and it's up to you if you want to steer the ship around the rocks or if you want to crash into the rocks again and be like, I can't believe it happened again, And so, you can only help people so much. They have to learn to help themselves. And self-love has become a kind of a cliche buzzword for a long time now, but it's true. The way I look at self-love is that if you can just stop being so hard on yourself, that's for me, So I used to say, if somebody treated me the way I treat myself, I would go to their house with a bat and cave their head in, right? And so it's like, can I stop being so hard on myself? I don't want to model that for my kids. I don't want my kids to be as hard on themselves as I am on myself, right? So I need to model that for them. And so like I say, you're going to make hundreds more mistakes in your life. That's happening. There's no way you're not making a bunch more mistakes in your lifetime. So just accept that and go, can I not be as hard on myself? Can I stop being as hard on myself when I make those mistakes? It's not that I'm never going to make mistakes. It's, can I stop being so hard? Can I stop beating myself up? Can I be a little kinder, more compassionate, more loving to myself through these mistakes that I know I'm going to make? And if you can make that shift, gosh, that changes your whole world.
Oh, gosh, this is like doing the breath work without the breath work, but you gotta do the breath work, people. I gotta tell you, this is so inspiring and so enlightening. What's coming up next for you, Jon Paul? Is there a book in the works? Because I'm thinking there should be a book. Is there something coming up from you beyond obviously the great work that you do online and in person?
Yeah, the book has been in the back of my wheelhouse for a while. I was a screenwriter in Hollywood for 10 years. So the book is there. I just need to sit down and write it. I've been so busy now that everything opened up again. I do breathwork trainings, right? So I teach people how to teach this. I show people my technique on how to lead other people through it. And then they go, oh my God, you were so right. Like, this is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. Like, when you start taking other people through and you start feeling so good about yourself, you're doing something amazing in the world. And then the byproduct is they pay you for it, but that's not the goal. The goal is to help other people. And the byproduct is you get paid for it. When you switch that, amazing. So I do teacher trainings. I do them in person about 4 times a year now. And then I also have them online if you can't come in person for people all over the world. I have them online. I just rebooted them. I had this amazing guy shoot them. I spent 6 months and a fortune like making it the best online training you can possibly do. But I also have courses if you don't want to be a teacher, but you want to do this breath work, if you want to go deeper, I have this thing called the 5-day emotional detox. And that's a combination of the workshops that I used to do in LA, like the transformational letter and the love letter and the affirmations, right? So it's a 5-day emotional detox course that's really powerful. And, I do my classes on Sunday. And we'll just see. We'll see what's next. I've got some things in the works, and you never know. I try to stay, sort of grounded where I'm at and present, and then also have goals to work towards. Jon Paul, this is where you wanted to be. You wanted to be here 5 years ago. Can I just stop and take it in and enjoy this beautiful moment with my children, with you here on this podcast, doing this class? Can I just be in this class and love this moment of this class and not be on to the next thing for once in my life? So I'm trying to just enjoy this success and everything that's coming in right now, because this is where I wanted to be. Let me not be on to the next thing right now. Sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to stop and realize where you are today is where you wanted to be a few years ago.
Oh, yes. And look at the gifts. Look at the gifts that you've given to people. And I just love your rawness and your realness, Jon Paul. And I even love the things that you have on your website for people who want to check it out. that you have your Spotify list. By the way, you could be a DJ in another life, because I mean, Jesus Christ, like you have amazing playlists there that are just.
Well, that's what I was saying when it all comes together. So like I was really into music growing up, and I toured with rock bands, and then I was a writer. So the writing goes into creating what I say at the beginning of the class, and I did comedy a little bit, and I did this, and I was an actor, and I was a personal trainer. So I push people as a personal trainer, and then I did this. And so all the little things I've done in my life, all those millions of jobs that I maybe didn't succeed at. Well, I was a very successful trainer and a very successful sober coach, but all these things, like they all go into it. It all makes sense now. You're like, oh, now I'm in my purpose. If it doesn't make sense for you in your life right now, then you're probably not in your purpose. You're probably not in your gift. If you're looking back and going, oh, it all makes sense, like then you're in that. It's really the hero's journey, right? It's Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. Like it all makes sense, and then you have to turn around and bring it back to people and give it away.
That is such a beautiful closure to this amazing podcast. I want to ask you a question that I asked to all my guests.
Okay.
And this is going to be an interesting, fun little test for somebody like you, Jon Paul. How would you define yourself in 3 words?
In 3 words, define myself. Oh my God. I would say like, so just using adjectives like funny, compassionate, loving, or I would, maybe even trade compassionate for emotional.
That is doing the best you can. And I'm going to add of how I see you, Jon Paul. And it kind of goes full circle with what you said just a few minutes back. You're a lighthouse. You are a beautiful lighthouse that I hope people will find when they're sailing their ship of life and be guided by you in some manner, because that's truly how I see you, as a beautiful, beautiful lighthouse. And thank you so much for existing and for everything that you bring into the world. You even changed me in so many ways, and I really hope everybody gets to experience you in a Zoom, in person, on your website, on this podcast, because it's truly a gift, and you are almost like someone that reminds us of how truly beautiful it is to be connected to ourselves and to one another. And so I want to thank you for that, and thank you for coming on my podcast.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed it. I've had so much fun on here, and yeah, I'm sure some people are going to be like, I saw you, I heard you on the podcast, and I came to the class, and so I love that. And I can't wait to connect with your people and your audience and crack them open and have them have this experience and hear like, oh, I found you through the heart of show business, and so thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been so wonderful. And yes, I'm sure they will, because, and people know that I created this podcast for this reason. Like, well, pandemic, I'm like losing my mind. And I'm like, how can I bring hope, inspiration, and upliftment and education all kind of packaged all in once to all those great artists out there who are trying to make something? Because you can be an artist without having to be an artist. You can be an artist of life. Right? And like you said, it can change and it can evolve. But if you have that heart and that messaging that you're craving for it to get out, I recommend that you do the work. And the work can be as simple as taking a breath. So if you like this episode, please subscribe, review, listen to it a few times again. Everything is in the show notes. You can go and check out Jon Paul's website and what he's doing. I can't wait to see you in Santa Monica, Jon Paul. God, it's
I can't wait to come. I'm excited for that class. So thank you.
Yes. And everybody, please make sure you replay this a few times, because you may have missed a few great, important wisdom nuggets from this amazing guest. And thank you all for listening, and have a beautiful day.